I am diversity. Now, don't be alarmed, I am an old white guy. And for some folks, that's all they see. We've been conditioned to think inside boxes for so long that people, perhaps unintentionally, try to trap me there. Many companies, colleges, and government institutions do so. I'm branded, locked away in the old box, the white box, the male box. These labels combine to form a picture of me, but it's not really me. It's a convenient cartoon version, exactly the type of image that diversity programs try and suppress. Well, maybe that's a harsh word, but I think most would agree that diversity programs look at that picture, my picture, and swipe left. But I am diversity. That is, if what we're really after is diversity of thought and experience. But inclusion is a delusion. What companies are really after, it seems, is a Matrix movie-style con game designed to pit us all against each other and deliver a perfect and ultimately placating marketing brochure. But let me back up. If I want more diversity in an organization and I have an open role, who do I choose? Many of you paused and immediately considered education, qualifications, skills, experience, the role in question, and I commend you for doing so. But that wasn't quite the question. As it sometimes happens in the selection process, either overtly through quotas or through sidebar talent conversations, the need for a diverse candidate is expressed. So who do we pick? It's still a really tough call from the information provided. So here's an easier question. Who do we not pick? Now you might think me and get out a very tiny violin, but look closer. Who's not even on the page? When diversity is code for one sex or a handful of groups, everyone suffers. The people in the excluded boxes, for obvious reasons, they don't get the job or the scholarship or the second look. But diversity candidates suffer as well, and I think to a greater degree, because if we're not careful, these programs can send a subtle message that whispers, less than, or worse, commodity. These programs assume that a woman, for example, simply by being a woman brings something new and different to a team. But isn't that a stereotype? Isn't that a label? Isn't that the same as saying all women bring the same magical womanness? Diversity comes from thought, from experience, from how you approach a challenge and how you examine an opportunity, all of which is built over a lifetime and not simply ordained because you're gay or straight or fill in the blanks. Companies have gotten lazy with how they select people because we've gotten lazy with how we see them. But life is complex. Heck, my daughter can check the Hispanic box on an application. But should she? Does it mean the same to her as it did to her grandfather or great uncle, the latter of whom escaped a series of political, social, and economic hardships that we don't even have in America? There's a lot to that check mark. More than I'll ever understand. But I know this, we are all more than our labels. Now, some might say that we need these programs. After all, women, for example, face a series of social pressures and Hollywood images and work-life balance challenges, and all of this is true. Many of you face it today. But don't guys face similar issues? I mean, have you seen the cover of Men's Health lately? I'll never have those abs. Not when I'm trying to be super dad and husband and brother and son. And then there's Esquire and a dozen others telling me to be rich and handsome and successful, to wear this and drive that and be manly, but not too much as a new kind of guy. Be him, but still you, because authentic is key. And oh no, you're getting older, better not have low T or high cholesterol. Eat your kale, damn it, and make sure you take your male enhancement pill. Have to ensure the wife is satisfied lest she runs off with some young stud. It's exhausting. And it gets worse and worse the older you get. Did my hairline just recede? Now, some might argue that this pressure hits women harder and at a younger age. And again, this might be true. And as a father of an amazing little girl, I stand ready to kung fu any thoughtless jerk or debate any confidence-stealing social media message. But knowing her, I won't need to. Still, young boys face similar issues. We don't grow up comparing ourselves to Barbies, but have you seen Ken's stock portfolio? And what about James Bond and G.I. Joe? I don't have a kung fu grip or a grappling hook. How can I compete with those guys? And they're actually real-ish. Throw in billionaire Batman, tech genius, Tony Stark, super scientist, Spider-Man in the mix, and I've got no shot with the ladies. And here comes Superman. Great. Just what I need when I'm struggling to be adequate nerd. A half-assed Jimmy Olsen bumbling through puberty with an iPhone camera, invisible, friendless, sidebar in someone else's story. We all face insecurities and prepubescent pressures. Only our messages say, be strong, don't cry, rub some dirt in it, and get back out there. According to the CDC, over 2,000 kids between the ages of 15 and 19 committed suicide in 2015. 75% were boys. It's not a contest. Anything over 0 is a loss beyond compare. Growing up is hard in 1,000 different directions. We all face it, and we all need help. But what about the pay gap? That's it. That's why we need these programs. You ever notice when people say studies show, they rarely show you the studies? That's because many use broad census data and compare median incomes. It doesn't negate the point, but it sure dulls the hell out of it. The truth is sharp and specific. To find it, you need to look at which jobs, which levels, which locations, which organizations, which industries, and then compare the various whys behind it so you can actually do something when there's an issue. Still, I will say, after 20 years in HR, I've noticed that yes, you can lose ground if you step away from the workforce to do the awesome job of being a stay-at-home mom. But if I take time off to have back surgery or care for family or write a novel or be a dad, should I expect to pop back into the corporate structure at the same level as those who never left? Why are my choices and needs less than someone else's? Still, and maybe we're looking at the whole thing wrong. If you think about who is ultimately accountable, I don't blame the auto industry if I got a bad deal in a car. I'm just not that great at negotiating yet. So why do we blame the entire corporate structure if someone doesn't ask for a job or a raise or a promotion? And maybe we're looking at that whole thing wrong. If 2 contractors bid on a project at your house, one comes in at $7,000 and one comes in at $10,000, no one thinks twice if you select the lower bid, assuming quality is the same. We'd all make that choice. That's just good business. Maybe you just outbid the other candidate. After all, who has the job? But even if there was some sinister form out there that said, well, I see here you're a female, let's consult the secret salary ladder, where the hell is human resources? According to the Department of Labor, over 73% of HR managers are female. It sounds cheeky, but if you want to talk money, you can't pass the buck. We, HR, can do better, and we need to. Now, I'll be the first to say that I don't know what all of my colleagues have experienced. I think you could be interested in and sympathize with someone's situation, but you never fully know. Years ago, I lived and worked in Asia. And during that time, I studied the history, marveled in the culture, botched the language, and devoured the food. But for all of my enthusiasm, I'll never know what it's like to go to high school in Shanghai. And even if I could, I'd only see it through a single perspective, that of my lens, which is drastically different from even the person sitting right next to me. Experience is tricky. You have to actually experience it. We need to step away from the labels that diversity programs make us wear and begin to see individuals. My boxes say I'm just another old, straight, white guy with a conservative outlook. But that's the cartoon. Even the real picture isn't real. That smile, it's fake. It was knocked out by a low-level gangster who thought I was somebody else. Sure, I'm a foodie today, but that's because I grew up on food stamps and choked down government cheese as a kid. My brothers and I used to have this fantasy about being locked overnight in a supermarket. As a dyslexic, it took me years to realize that a B wasn't a P or a D or a 9, and when you're reading aloud in class and you see the sentence, ran the God, you just kind of have to know it means the dog ran. I've stood on line with family at the methadone clinic and played in a car outside of AA meetings. I live in boarding houses with questionable characters just to get through night school, and I've watched really good friends do really stupid things and go to prison. But I've been lucky. I won the lottery simply by being born in this place and this time, but also by meeting a handful of amazing men and women who put me on the right path. I've had my share of success, and I've seen a fair chunk of the planet, which is super cool for someone who never thought he'd leave the block. And like all of you, my successes have come from luck, from help, but mostly because I work my ass off, and you don't get that from a form or a photo or a label. Diversity programs in this country look at my picture, and because of what they see, exclude me from opportunities and assistance that, frankly, the kid I was really could have used. And it still goes on. I'm an off-the-chart introvert. This is actually terrifying for me. Where's my Men in Leadership program, my company-sponsored mentor? I am diversity. You've seen my picture, but you haven't seen my movie. And in fairness, I haven't seen yours, and that's the point. If we really want to drive social change, if we really want to get diversity of thought and experience into organizations, we need to let go of these ridiculously antiquated programs that generalize everyone and begin to embrace the power, the beauty, and the complexity of the individual. Let's start a new conversation, one with more listening and fewer assumptions. They say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, but the self is worth so much more than a selfie. Stories need to be told. Share yours. Better yet, listen to your neighbors. Once we begin to see, hear, and appreciate people as people, we'll rocket past equality. We'll get that dream. It'll be time for a new one. We can all be greater than. Thank you.